Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today, I try not to talk about AI all the time, but it's a thing, and I feel like AI or artificial intelligence is important and it's changing a lot of the ways that we do a lot of the things we do, especially as creatives and creative professionals. It is having a wide reaching, deep impact on everything, like good and bad, positive and negative. I'm lucky enough today to have Eric Yang on the show. He is the CEO of a company called Topaz Labs. He's been on TWiP before, you may remember him. But Topaz is one of those companies that is leaning into AI and doing it a fantastic job at leaning into this AI stuff, right? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what Topaz is doing in the AI space for creative professionals or just creatives in general. Then we're also going to just talk about the space and kind of do a touch point on what is happening and what can we look forward to, what should we be looking out for, and all of that. So, all that said, Eric, welcome to the show. It is good to have you on the podcast, sir.
It's great to be here, Frederick, and really appreciate you giving the opportunity to talk a little bit more about AI on your show.
We're going to talk a lot about AI, Eric. I don't get a lot of chance to talk about AI with people who care about artificial intelligence as much as I do. So we get to have that conversation today. Let's start at the beginning, right? You started Topaz Labs back in the day. Let's start before Topaz Labs. Who was Eric Yang before you had the epiphany moment of I gotta start a world-class software business? Like who were you before that?
Before that, I was a high school student, and it was my dad and I actually that started Topaz Labs. The Topaz comes from a computer game at the time called Diablo 2, that the Topaz was something that allowed you to get better items in there. So we decided to name it after that. And the labs came because we were going to build a technology company. Initially, we built some Photoshop plugins. We just had something like 10 to 15 different Photoshop plugins that would do different things with your images. And it was only pretty recently in 2018 that we shifted into AI for image enhancement. And that's been the story ever since.
What's the elevator pitch for the app? What does it do and who is it for?
Yeah, so we do image and video enhancement software. Basically, the value prop here is you have any image or video content, we can help you upgrade the value of it through improving the image quality. For example, you have a blurry photo, it's unusable. We can help you sharpen it so that you can put it on your portfolio or you can give it to a client. Even if you have a really high quality image, we can help you enhance it so that you can put it at 300 DPI and print it out for a wall print. So essentially taking what you already have and upgrading the value of it through better quality.
Yeah, I love that. And the first time I saw that was with the upscaling bit of it was with Gigapixel AI, right? One of the products that you famously put out. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because that feels like Gigapixel AI feels like it's doing unnatural things, right? It is making reality where reality didn't exist before, a blurry photo, like a blurry photo of a bird, and then I run it through Gigapixel and now I can see feathers on the bird or little strands in the retina and all that. How is that happening? Like, is that, I remember back like with Adobe, there were apps that used fractal enlarging, like they would, just to kind of mask the fact that you were making something bigger or creating pixels from nothing. You're doing something different with Gigapixel. What's the secret sauce, Eric?
Yeah, so it's so funny how things change in a really short amount of time. So we released Gigapixel in 2018. That's still the
Yeah.
first AI product that we released. And at the time, nobody was really talking about AI or using AI. And it was kind of a long shot that it would even work. So it was very experimental on our side. But basically, the idea is before, for the image enlargers of the time, they would use very complicated traditional image processing algorithms to enlarge images while making them still look kind of sharp. And these were actually really sophisticated image processing techniques. And what we did instead was just take high resolution images and then train a neural network to be able to reverse that process so that it can upscale images at a higher quality. Didn't know if it was going to work. Theoretically, it should have worked, but it really, really, really did work in practice. This was back in 2018, and at the time, I remember our biggest problem was we would show some of these examples on the website, and people would call us liars. They would just not believe that you could do this. And I remember we would get Facebook comments saying, "Ah, these are fake examples. There's no way you could possibly do this." Nowadays, it's a lot more believable because there's all these other tools, but that's how it started.
That is crazy. Yeah, it's a black box. Like, I watched this interview with Sam Altman, one of the guys behind OpenAI, ChatGPT, right? And in the interview, he alluded to the fact that a lot of the stuff that ChatGPT knows and does, they had no idea that it learned to do that. It's learning languages, and no one told it to learn a language, right? It just figured it needed to know that because someone asked it something that it couldn't answer. So it taught itself how to do that, which is scary, right? It's a little
Yeah.
scary that you have this intelligence that's training itself. So how does that work into what you like imaging on the image side? We've all heard of, we're going to talk a little bit about generative AI and all that, that black box that the software reaches into to pull out using diffusion models or whatever magic is in there. I'm still as much of a proponent and a fanboy for this kind of stuff that I am. I still can't connect how it can create something from nothing. Like even when you're taking an existing image and extrapolating and taking a 640 by 480 image and making it 4K or something like that, that's a lot of space between those that the software has to guess on. How does it guess what to put in those spaces?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. So one of the most common expressions that you'll hear at the office over here is wow or holy crap, because a lot of times the output of our own models is already pretty amazing to us as well.
Yeah.
So it is a different f- kind of product, a different kind of technology. I think traditional image processing, it never really gave that kind of wow effect because it was very deterministic. You can kind of know exactly how it will change an image in a very predictable way. With GAN models, generative adversarial networks, which is what our original Gigapixel used, it would fill in the detail extremely well. But now with diffusion models, it fills in the detail even more. In fact, it doesn't even need to fill in the detail, it can just generate it from text. So I think each new iteration of AI becomes more and more magical because it is more and more of a black box, as you say.
Yeah. And that black boxness, the black box of the technology, reminds me of the feeling I get when I'm using like lens baby lenses, right? They're great. You can do some cool stuff, but it's not necessarily repeatable. So if you create a shot and the light was diffracting in a certain way through the lens and you're doing all these things and you get this great shot and the client says, yeah, we like that shot. Now go do that over and over again in exactly the same way for these 30 products, you can't do that. I feel like a lot of that translates into generative AI and these kinds of technologies, the repeatability of it. And maybe we're just early in the process, but I'm curious what your thoughts on that. Like, especially from a professional perspective, when you really need like exact color or exact size, proportions, or some kind of, the requester has requested something very specific and you need to create that. Is AI just not the right job for that these days? Therefore, photography is safe? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think we can look at generative AI right now as the very early days of, as an analogy, very early days of digital photography where they could only take, 500 by 500 pixel images and nobody really used them seriously. And it was kind of like a toy, but they improved substantially since then. So I think in the pretty near future, in 3 to 5 years, you will be able to do a lot of these specific things like, okay, I want a certain color, or I want this to be just right, or I want this one angle on the shot in a very particular way. But I think more broadly, the interesting thing about generative AI is I think it elevates the human role in content creation past almost needing to focus on those details. So I think it elevates people more from being, say, painters into more of the creative director, where you can just kind of say what you want out of your image and it will get you there with a very minimum number of steps. So I think maybe in the future, we won't even care that it's a black box as long as it's helping us get what we want out of our images.
Yeah. Yeah, and well said, because a lot of that feels like, the conversations that people have had over the years when any new technology shows up, right? Because a lot of people get married to the process when the destination is really what is the key, right? You get married to the process of, oh, in order to create this thing, I mix this and I do that, and then I have a candle
Mhm.
playing and this kind of music playing. And, it's the process that they enjoy, which is 100% valid. And then at the end of it, they have this thing that they created that's theirs and literally is imprinted with the process of building it. And you take all that out of it and create a shortcut to the end result, then it becomes, yeah, it was all about the story to begin with. I'm trying to tell a
Right.
story with the path of least resistance, and now you can use these tools to do that. And we see that playing out in the other kinds of AI, right? We were talking before we started about large language models and how those are allowing certain things to happen that were impossible just a few
Yeah.
short months ago. So I don't know. I mean, this stuff, like you mentioned, 5 years, like a 5-year horizon seems super conservative, right? It feels like it's changing almost daily. For example, today, speaking of changes in generative AI, Midjourney announced a new addition to their tool. I think it's the external editor or something, where you can take your image and kind of in paint and stretch it
Yeah.
and do all the things, but you're doing it within this interface versus somewhere else. Kind of what Adobe's doing already, but now Midjourney is doing it on the web. How do you feel about that? I mean, you are one of the people that are innovating and building these kind of things and using tools and all that. That rapid pace, are developers like you able to keep up with that and keep innovating? Like tomorrow, is Midjourney or someone going to come out, or Leonardo going to come out with something that's like, oh, now Eric has to work for another 4 weeks to get that tech incorporated or compete with it. How do you approach that? Or do you even care? Are you just like, Topaz, we have our goal, we're just going to press forward no matter what?
Yeah. So for us, we're in a pretty fortunate place where we don't actually touch the editing side. So we touch it when you need to improve something about the work that you already have. So actually, when somebody comes out with a new text to video model, or when Midjourney comes out with a new editor, for us, it's great because there's more content for us to upskill. I really do like what you said about at the end of the day, it's all about the story, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes getting too attached to the process of creating that story misses the point a little bit, because you mentioned 5 years, and this also relates with the Midjourney news, which, by the way, is pretty amazing. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, as far as the process of creating content goes, you will be able to, given a certain vision of the kind of photo or probably video that you want, and given the ability to describe it using words or certain reference images or any other kind of input, you'll be able to create a perfectly photorealistic image or video based on your vision, with every single aspect exactly how you want it, for a very low cost in seconds. And I think the interesting thing is that is absolutely going to happen. And what does that mean in terms of storytelling for content creators or photographers or whoever?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the question. As artificial intelligence becomes more ubiquitous and more just sort of matter of fact, which I think will happen relatively quickly, especially now that Apple has, announced Apple Intelligence. So having these sorts of generative AI and large language model technologies integrated at the handset level, I think will change a lot, right? Even in terms of just understanding how the tech works so that they can then go do something more extravagant. Like if I can do this on my phone, yeah, that Topaz thing, I could probably, change worlds with that thing, right?
Mm.
So, with ubiquity and the matter of factness of AI kind of on the horizon, it reminds me of the Pixar movie The Incredibles. You remember that? And the villain in The Incredibles, I forget what his name was. Somebody will tell me. But the villain, his main thing was to give everyone on the planet superpowers, because
Mm.
when everyone has superpowers, no one has superpowers, right? So I feel like that with AI, The superpowers though that we're getting through Apple Intelligence and through, the different creative softwares like your own, et cetera, like they'll become like, okay, yeah, it's like Microsoft Word. Of course we can do that. Of course we can change all these things. Or like sky replacement 2 years ago was, wow, sky replacement. And today it's like, oh, sky replacement, right? So like, but once we get to that matter of fact level, I'm curious your thoughts on, once all of the stuff that we can do today is no longer exciting, what's the exciting thing? What is the
Yeah.
thing that's going to show up that we're going to be like, holy crap, I didn't know we could do that, or I had no idea that was coming? What do you see in your sort of Nostradamus, lens?
I think the Incredibles villain is such a great example, actually, because
Right.
it's true. Really, what all these things, these technology advancements are getting us is more superpowers, and we
Yeah.
can look in history to see the effect of these things on creatives. So when digital photography came out and became viable, that was arguably a huge superpower over film photography. You could immediately preview your image, and you could take 5,000 of them at no cost. That's a huge
Yeah.
superpower. So
Right.
before, when it was arguably pretty impressive to take a properly exposed and sharp photo of an interesting subject on film and have it come out looking pretty technically correct, that was considered pretty good, right? You're a pretty good
You're a good
photographer.
photographer. Yeah.
Yeah, after digital, suddenly the bar raised a little bit where, okay, now that's not enough. Maybe you have to take um a better story, or you have to have something more evocative about it than just having it
Mhm.
be exposed correctly and sharp. I think it'll be the same with AI, at the point where anybody can generate any image that you could possibly imagine and have it look completely photorealistic and do it within seconds. Then I think it does become all about the story and uh, the kind of the human elements that come from that.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's also another analogy that I actually follow pretty closely. Which do you ever follow chess by any chance?
Mm-mm, mm-mm. I know how to play it,
So
and know how to play it is, I say that loosely. I understand the rules of the game.
I remember, I think this was in the 90s or something, the first time a computer beat a chess grandmaster. It was I think Deep Blue versus Kasparov, and everybody was freaking out. They were like, "Okay, chess is dead. A computer can beat a human. There's no point in watching it anymore." Um, and nowadays, chess computers are by far way better than humans at playing. If you match Magnus Carlsen, the best human player in the world, with a fifth-rate chess computer, it will crush the human every single time. But yet, people don't watch chess computer games that they play against each other. People still watch the human championships, and it's much more popular than ever. And then the question is, why is that, right? And I think it's because the human stories that are told there, and how much people struggle to win the championships, and the preparation they have, and all the ups and downs of everything that really matter. People don't watch chess for chess, they watch it for the stories. And similarly, I don't think people just look at photos or videos just for the pixels. They look at it for the story behind them.
Yeah. Yeah, the story is the thing. I mean, the story, it's all about the story. Uh, and I feel like and tell me if you agree with this. I feel like we're in this transitional period right now in a lot of ways that we may not, I mean, we may be gone before the transition is complete, if it's ever complete, right? But I feel like we're in this transitional period where like the artisanship of photography, like the necessity to understand f-stop shutter speeds and to, know how to blur your background, or compositional of things, or all the things that go into being a good photographer, professional or otherwise. Those The tools and the skills to do that are becoming less and less necessary, which, for better or for worse, for some people it's just less and less necessary, because I think for a group of people that were after the story, they're like, you know what? I just want to tell the story. I have this vision in my head of a lady in a red dress floating above a blue lake, with wispy clouds in the sky, something like that. And yes, I can create that. I need to go hire the model. I need to find the location. I need to be competent with photography, all the things. I need to know how to use Photoshop or whatever to do the compositing, etc. Or I could type it in and get a great starting point. It may not be exactly what I want today, but damn, it's pretty close to what I wanted. And now I got the image, and it was like a couple of minutes or an hour or so versus weeks and weeks and weeks of preparation, all that. But the weeks and weeks of preparation that go into doing a quote real shot like that, I feel like that shot has more gravity, right? Because it's got humans in it and humans made it and all things. So there's room for both in the world. A friend of mine uses AI to generate elements for his commercial work, right? So he's like, "Oh, I need to create this shot for a knife brand, and they want a shot of their knife on a trail sticking in a piece of wood, and that's the shot." So he could go drive and find the perfect place at the perfect time with the light
Mhm.
exactly where he needs it to be, or create a bunch of backgrounds using AI and shoot the knife with matching lighting and composite them together, and every no one knows the difference. So I don't know. I feel like, and I'm curious if you agree with this. Does is the future of I hate the word "the" is a possible future of where this stuff might go, the hybrid destination where, you're shooting stuff with your expensive camera, but then you're also incorporating AI elements, or you're doing an AI thing and you need a real world element in there, so you use your real, quote, "real" camera. Is that,
I think so.
how do you fall on that?
I think that's where it will end up. I think there's
Yeah.
one additional nuance to this as well, where there's two types of stories in the world. One type is uh, the kind of story that is allegorical, that is not actually real, that maybe introduces some concept or makes you feel some kind of emotion. There's a lot of stories like this. Most Hollywood movies are like this. If we take some stock photography, maybe it tells, a contrived story about, a businessman sitting there in a suit or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And there is a lot of value in stories like this. The second kind of story is a true story, that something that actually physically happened in the real world. So something like a wedding photo, or maybe it's taking a picture of wildlife that only happens to be there at a particular season, and you want to capture it in the real world. Maybe it's a beautiful landscape that only exists in this one place on planet Earth that you want to capture and bring back to people. And this kind of story, there's actually no way really to generate it purely through AI. You have to have a connection to the real world in order to tell this kind of story.
Mhm.
And I think that even the fact that it becomes in 3 to 5 years, it'll become 100 times easier to create the first type of story, the story that is not rooted in the real world, will actually make the second type of story rarer and more valuable. So I think people that are able to capture real stories with rooted in the real world and real world human experiences will never become irrelevant. In fact, I think that'll just become more important with time as it becomes easier to create content.
Yeah, yeah, it's like blurring the lines. I wonder, like, as we approach that line where things, it's not a line, it's a blurry line, but as things get easier and easier over time, the trust goes down too, right? As it becomes
Mhm.
easier to create surreality or false reality that looks identical or better than reality, right? Or indistinguishable at worst or at best, then you really can't trust anything that you look at. And what does that mean for everything else? I mean, I know, what is it? Sam Altman at OpenAI, one of the companies that he started, is focused on authentication, I guess you call it, of
Mhm.
digital or AI imagery or video and that kind of thing. So I feel like that's a growth space,
Yeah.
to something to to give you the peace of mind that what you're looking at on a screen is, to tell you what it is. It's real or AI. And Google today even announced, as we record this on the, what is the 24th of October, Google announced that they are going to start tagging AI images in Google Photos, ones that have been edited with AI somehow. And then I read that article and I'm thinking, I looked at the headline, I haven't read the whole article yet, but I'm thinking, but, what does that mean? Where's the line? Like, for example, with Topaz, if I use Gigapixel and I upsize an image, is that image now AI? Right? And will Google flag that image as AI because its orbit came too close to AI algorithms, right? Or, is it images that were fully generated from AI? I wonder, like, how does that work? What would you prefer in that? Like, as a developer?
Yeah. It's such an interesting question because it's sort of blurring the lines between a technical difference versus um, a societal or a human difference, because really it is what we think it is. Technically, none of the pixels that you see on the screen after taking an image are purely representative of the image that you captured, right?
Right.
And technically, if you run anything through Gigapixel, or if you run anything through a lot of Photoshop tools like Photoshop enlargement or anything, they a lot of them will use AI models. Uh, if you compress an image to display it online, they go through algorithms to do that. So I guess it just depends on what the purpose of that AI label is. If it's,
Hmm.
hey, this might not represent reality, then that's one thing. Or hey, this had generative elements inserted into it, maybe that's another.
Yeah.
Of course, for us, I would prefer if we didn't have the AI label because we
Sure.
don't
Yeah.
meaningfully change the contents of the image, but I guess it's up to society to determine.
Yeah, it'll probably end up something in as normal, somewhere in between, right? With
Yeah.
a label that says something like contents of this image may have been, altered by AI or something like that, so to leave it kind of ambiguous, like just which could be everything. And like you said, I've had these discussions before about what is true, like these pure, like the pure photographers out there that are purists. I don't crop my images, it's straight out of camera, SOOC, all this stuff, which is fine, if that's what you want to do, nobody's stopping you, that's great. But I think about that and I think there's flaws in that logic that you highlighted. Like even in the film days, you're not making all the decisions about your image. You're not making the decision on how the film stock that you're using, the engineers that put it together made the decisions on how those halides and how many of them are going to be on each frame of film. That decision was made for you. You snap the picture, it's going through lens elements and all that stuff. Engineers figured out what's going to happen there, right? So all these things happen, and when you process it, how long, and the chemicals that you process the film in and that you print the paper with, all decisions, right, that are made after the fact. So there's no like pure. Even with digital, when you take a photo, so you're taking a JPEG photo or even a raw photo, the computer is writing what it thinks you're looking at onto that media. And in the case of like iPhones, at the point of capture, 20 gazillion things are happening to your image to make it better before it even gets written or before you even see it on your phone. All these things have happened. The image is already edited. It's already done, and you're getting the best that your editor thinks it can be, right? So in that world, we're already soaking in it, right? We're already in this world and using AI in parts of our lives that we may not even realize. Like, Grammarly, for example. Like all these things are making our lives a little bit easier, that we don't know about. And I wonder, when will people care about that? Just to wrap this part of it up, the controversial part of it, like are we at a point now where it's like, oh, we're struggling because, and there's controversy, and these photographers, the old guard, so old guard of photographers are like, oh, that's not real photography. It's taking our jobs, all that. But the new guard is like, oh, think of what I could do now. Think of the stories I can tell now. Think of the businesses I can build now that these walls have fallen. They've given me these great tools. I wonder, can those two worlds coexist? or is the only solution attrition to that? Right? I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think the good news is there's always going to be room for stories told in the real world. So
Yeah.
I think a majority of photographers right now that are telling that are taking wedding photos or landscape or astrophotography, wildlife, sports photography that have stories rooted in the real world, we're actually I think see demand for those skills and those kinds of stories rise rather than decrease in a world that is going to be flooded with stories of the first kind that don't exist in the real
Mhm.
world,
Yeah.
fake stories, right? So I think that's the good news. But I think in terms of whether these kinds of technologies are going to be accepted by people, sometimes I think that the labels or the warning signs on AI generated is applying a technology solution to a problem that is probably best solved socially or societally.
Mhm.
So right now, for example, if I show my friend a photo of me with Barack Obama standing there. And I'm like,
Mhm.
hey, this was, and it looks pretty good. And it's like, this is me with Obama. And it's, I never actually stood there with them. There's some kind of societal stigma against that, right? Like, even if that photo was technically perfect, I probably wouldn't really get away with that. I think
Right.
it'll be similar with content creation in the future. Just because we can do it easily doesn't mean that number one, we should, or number two, it will be just immediately accepted as good work.
Totally, totally. I agree with that 100%. You know, even on the LLM side, right? Because you have, let's say you have a person that's writing their resume that maybe doesn't have the best command of the English language, right? But then they found ChatGPT, and now they do. So they create this beautifully well written Queen's English, you know, resume, and they give it to the recruiter or the hiring person. And when they show up, they're speaking in their not so great English, but their resume is
Sure.
perfection, right? And just you not sounding anything like the person. That's a negative mark, I think, especially in this day. Because, like, if it were me as a hiring manager, I'd be like, points for using artificial intelligence, negative points for not disclosing that, or not using it properly, because you could have used that LLM to write a
Mm,
resume for you in your voice, right? Correct grammar, but still it could have been more you. So those kind of things. I think you hit it right on the head. It's, we'll sniff those out mostly right away, but not always, right? Some will make
yep.
it through, and the person viewing it is the requirement is also, or the onus is also on that person to be smart enough to not make life-changing decisions based on whatever they see without, fact checking it or making sure that, oh, that is actually a spaceship landing on the Golden Gate Bridge. So I should take a drive to the city to check it out. Right.
Right, right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
a great point because at the end of the day, it's all just a better tool, right?
yeah.
So you can
Yeah.
use it for it's tools are amoral. You can use them for good or for bad. You can use a
Yeah.
fire to burn somebody, or you can use it to cook delicious food to move civilization forward. So I
That's
think
right.
at the end of the day, that's what AI is, and we'll definitely adapt to it.
It is a good tool. So here's another question that's related, or a direction. Mobile photography, right? So these iPhone, 16 Pro Max is the latest and greatest from Apple, right? And they're getting more and more into photography. Before it was an app, and now it's starting to take up space on the hardware, and
Mm,
they're making the software better and better, bringing they've already had machine learning in there, but things are getting better and better, and not seemingly slowing down on the innovation side when it comes to mobile photography, both on Apple side and the Android side, right? So the one side of that, the first part of that question is, some manufacturers, I think it was Samsung, one of them, I remember there was this camera that they made, or this phone that they made, that if you took a picture of the moon, it would then replace. You know where I'm going with this, right? It
right,
would
I remember this.
it
Yeah.
would replace the moon with the stock photography shot of the same moon in the same position, and seamlessly composite it into the sky, making you think that you just either this phone is amazing or I'm amazing, right? But meanwhile, it's just showing you a composited image. the end result of that is some people I've seen shots like that and they look great. Like, and end result is you were there, the moon was there in that same phase. You took a picture, and now that moon in that phase is where the moon should be in the sky in that phase. Is that ethical? Is it moral? Is it, is it right? Because today the moon, tomorrow anything, right? You could do like at the point of capture though, is what I'm talking about. Like with this power in these phones is coming, like these things could happen, reality bending things could happen either at the point of capture or on the handset. Like with Apple's new stuff, you can like, okay, I can do in painting now on my images on my
Right.
phone. Like, how do you feel about that? Like the point of capture editing of the image. We want to talk about, okay, engineers, in control of silver halides, now in control of the content that is
Yeah,
recorded,
yeah.
right?
So in that specific case, actually, I'm curious to see what you think about this as well. But to
Mhm.
me, it depends on what the story was that you were trying to tell with that photo. If the
Sure.
story was you were trying to take a picture of the moon and say, "Ooh, look how great the moon was tonight," then what you're doing is replacing a real story with a fake story by replacing that
Mhm.
image of the moon, right? And
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that is, I don't know about unethical, but at least that's not true to the original, the intent of what you're trying to tell there.
yeah.
But I think maybe if it was a wedding shot at night and the moon happened to be in the background and it wasn't the central part of the story, and then it got enhanced or replaced a little bit, but the actual story was centered around the couple that was going to spend the rest of their lives together, then maybe that's just an enhancement to the, the scene, right?
I
So
agree.
the,
Yeah.
the line is a little bit blurry just depending on what kind of story it is that you want to tell.
Yeah, and I don't even think the line is blurry. I think it's like you said, it's usage. So if you're taking an art
Mm.
piece and you just want to, hey, back to the Golden Gate Bridge because I'm in the Bay Area, right? So hey, the Golden Gate Bridge is there, and I've never seen the moon like that above it. And you don't know how to take that photo, right? Especially if you're trying to use professional gear, it takes skill in order to capture a night photo of a moon, illuminating the Golden Gate Bridge and then get it all right. If it's just for aesthetic purposes or for beauty, and you're not trying to represent, like you said, what happened in reality, it's fine, right? It's like I used to say, all pixels were born to be punished. I think it's you're just compositing. You're compositing at the time of capture, right? Versus, oh, look at this great shot of of the bridge I got. Let me go find a moon to put in there to make it look better, right?
Mm.
It's just doing that at the point of capture. I think you get in trouble when you try to misrepresent, and that's anything. Like if you're shooting that wedding and you put the camera puts the moon in the background and it's a fantastic shot, then you tell the bride and groom, yeah, that comes from years of experience and trial and error. That's experience there, and that's why I charge you so much because I'm that good, right? Then that's not right. A better way to communicate that would be like, hey, the bride and groom look at the photo like, oh, this is beautiful, I love this, look at the moon, how'd you do that? Yeah, the I did it with AI, or the phone did it and put that in there. That moon wasn't actually there, but it's the same moon, right? It's
Yeah.
just we only have one, and it does the same thing all the time. So we have a library of images to just kind of plop in there. Yeah, so being transparent, I think, is the key for all of this. There's even shades of gray with that, though, right? Like the transparency side of it, and the fact that this is, we're making the assumption that the people that we're talking about are honest. So if there are dishonest people using these kinds of technologies, that's a whole different conversation about what they can do and how that stuff, if even if it can be policed, right? That
Yeah.
world. But we have these phones, like I mentioned, the iPhone 16 Pro Max is out with a dedicated camera button. Um, and then of course we have the constant rise of AI on this side. So on the one side we have AI, just kind of every other day there's some news about some new thing. And then every year, maybe they'll slow that cadence down, but every year this new iPhone that has a better camera and now it's 50 50K images or something, so you have all these things, and they're growing up together and now they're starting to merge together. Does is the future here, and here's a pointed question, Eric, is the future of photography, like as we know it, like I have my camera bag sitting right, my peak design camera bag sitting right over there with my Nikon and lenses and like that, and I pick it up and I know I'm going out to take pictures and, I know what I'm doing. I know how all this stuff works and I'm a photographer, damn it. Right. Uh, but if I go out with just my phone, I might get better pictures, right? So are we heading towards that? Like, are old guys like me with their camera bags, like the dinosaurs, and new people with a cool phone in their back pocket, the new guard? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So
It's tough, right?
there's that saying that the best camera is the one that you have with you,
You're
right? And
right.
I think that's
Right.
pretty true, especially for capturing events that might only happen for a couple of moments. Um, a little bit unrelated, but I recently got the Meta glasses,
Oh
that
yeah, me
the
too.
Ray-Bans that
Hmm.
that take video and photos with just a little click there. You don't even have to take out your phone. And I found myself taking a lot more photos and videos. And the quality isn't even as good as what you would get on a very low end DSLR,
Yeah.
but it's definitely good enough. And so I do think that I guess it's when you take the professional camera and the professional equipment out in the field, I guess what is the problem that that's solving? There's one problem, which is image quality, right? You get better
Hmm.
image quality with that. I think in the future that part probably be able to be handled by post processing. You can get the best image quality with your phone or with your Ray-Ban glasses.
Yeah.
Um, Now, there are also other potential problems that you might solve by taking all that equipment out. One subconscious one might be the identity piece, right? So,
Mm.
as an example, I have a Leica camera,
Hmm.
and I think technically speaking, there is probably no difference between me shooting my Leica and me shooting a less expensive but nice camera.
Yeah.
But somehow my identity really wants me to shoot that Leica, and when the image came out of the Leica, it just seemed so much better, and because
Yeah.
I kind of worked for it a little bit more. So I think
Yeah.
all that also plays into the kind of equipment that you want to take out, and there's also no wrong answers. But
Yeah.
I do think that the image quality piece will be solved, or at least will not be exclusively the realm of expensive equipment in the future.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, and a lot of it is theater, right? Especially if you're shooting for clients, and even though you can do a superior job with your iPhone and have more flexibility, or with a phone period, versus using your quote proper camera, you got to show up with gear that's more expensive than the client owns, right? So so
Right.
that theater part is currently part of the equation for now,
Yeah.
right? I mentioned attrition in the beginning. So yeah, as the world gets more and more knowledgeable about what these smaller devices can do, the stigma of, oh, that was shot with a phone, it must be garbage, right? That's out the door. And a lot of us started that way because images from phones were terrible. Like I remember the last smartphone. God, what was it back in the day before iPhone was a Palm Treo? You remember the Palm Treo? That one, like a giant Star Trek communicator thing with the chiclet buttons on it and everything. So that thing, and the camera had a camera on it, but I called that camera. I mean, the camera was garbage. Like even by the standards of the day, the camera was garbage, and it would trick you into missing memories because you're like, oh, I don't need to take a back then we had point and shoots too, right? So I was like, I
Mm,
don't need to take a point and shoot with me. I'll just take my phone because it has a camera on it. And you go out and take pictures of things that will never happen again and they're crap, right? So you miss the image. A lot of us did that, I think. And then you fast forward to today when the cameras are superior to those point and shoots by far, but encroaching on, or in some case passing DSLRs, but we still have that, you know, images out of phones is crap, right? We have that feeling.
mhm.
But attrition that will go away, to replace by people that have never even touched a physical DSLR or mirrorless camera in the future. They
Yeah.
will only know a world of small, highly capable supercomputer devices that we carry around everywhere. When that happens, wedding photography, does it change? Commercial photography, is that going to change? Will people start moving more in that direction? You overlay AI into it. Now I can do all kinds of stuff with the image, and so can client. Like, wh- how does that change these industries when everyone can do anything at any time to an image from that was created from a little tiny device that they have in their pocket that runs their life, right? So, yeah, that's more of a that's rhetorical because no one knows the answer to that, right? It's just like
Right.
this
Right.
this stuff will happen. Do you like personally? Do you find yourself taking more photos with your iPhone than you do like with a? I keep calling proper camera. I got to find a good name for it. Like regular camera, proper camera, or physical camera. I don't know. Like, do you?
Yeah,
Do you? Are you
absolutely.
shoot more? Yeah,
I think the more available the camera is to me, the more I shoot, period.
yeah,
So the glasses was actually a major innovation for for me, because then I don't even have to take my phone out
yeah,
to take the picture. But nowadays, unless it's for something that requires really high quality, I rarely take out the DSLR anymore.
yeah.
Um, so it's definitely caused a big change for me. And I know that for image quality, I can always handle it in post processing with some really cool software that we developed.
Yeah, that I've heard of it. Yeah, yeah. I want to
Yeah.
talk about that software. Perfect segue, my friend. Perfect segue.
No, there we go.
So, yeah, so I went. So we talked a little bit about Gigapixel AI. You make a couple of different software packages that I want to talk about. One or one aspect of what you're doing, and I think might be relatively new, or maybe I just didn't know about it. But API access. You have
Mm,
API access. Is it into which app is it into, or is it all of them? Like how does that work, and why did you implement it?
yeah.
And
So
explain what API access is for those who don't know what API is first.
for sure. Yeah. So an API is just you can send an image to our server, and then we'll send it back into your app or your website um, entirely seamlessly. So you don't have to use our desktop app in order to access the upscaling or the noise reduction or whatever function that you want. That way you can make your own application that uses our technology without having to manually do it.
Right.
And I think the reason we did that is historically we've been very focused on prosumers, so literally people with fancy cameras, people with
Mm,
DSLRs or mirrorless cameras, dedicated equipment for shooting photos, and we just completely focused on that customer segment for like 5 or 6 years since
yeah.
2018, and basically said no to every other customer segment. But more recently, a lot more businesses have been contacting us wanting to use the technology in different ways. So we decided to open it up to them recently.
That's awesome. That's awesome. The so explain the other softwares that you're producing as well, just before we move on. So
Yeah.
we've got
So
Gigapixel and then
yep.
Sharpen and then what else is in the suite?
Yeah. So we got Gigapixel, which is to upscale your photos. And actually, we recently released a pretty interesting model that uses diffusion, which is the technology that powers Midjourney and the new kind of models. But we do it in a way that it maintains the faithfulness to your original image. So it keeps the image staying the same. It just makes it way more detailed.
Mm,
And that's kind of the point of Gigapixel. Actually, we're pretty excited about that because usually when you use that kind of technology, it will just completely change the image. But we made very sure to make it not change the original.
yeah.
So we have Gigapixel, and then we have Photo AI that will help you sharpen and denoise, especially photos that came out of DSLRs and mirrorless cameras at with low lighting or fast shooting conditions. And then we have a video product that does all of that for video.
I'm
Um,
interested in that. Oh, I'm really interested. I want to. Maybe that's a whole different
yeah,
discussion bit about video. So yeah, we're gonna cliffhanger the video discussion because we
sure.
need to dive into that
Video is
with some
actually
intent.
it's super interesting right now because the state of video is maybe 3 years behind the state of image in everything, in generation and enhancement and everything. So what you see in image right now, it will apply to video almost exactly probably 3 years from now. So you can kind of see the
Wow.
future of video a little bit.
What's the gating factor? Is it just processor speed?
Yeah, the temporal element of video makes it way harder than image. So
Right.
you can apply image models to video on a frame by frame basis, but between the frames, you'll see all these crazy motion artifacts that just look completely unnatural. So handling those is the toughest part of either creating video generation models or video enhancement models.
Wow. I was looking at one of I mentioned to you, I said I'm a customer of Gigapixel AI, and one of the main reasons that I have it was I was shooting Micro Four Thirds before, and which I'm sure a gazillion of your customers are, and that's they're using it to upscale images. But being able to take a Micro Four Thirds image and blow it up, use denoise to you know denoise the image or sharpen the image, gets you closer in some cases beyond what a DSLR could do because you have additional reach because of the Micro Four Thirds crop factor and all those things. I'm curious, am I right on that? Is that a huge market segment for you, the people that shoot with the smaller sensors and but don't want to move to a bigger sensor camera?
Yeah, actually, that was a huge customer segment. I remember there were some forums that were dedicated to Micro Four Thirds, and a lot of them
Yes.
recommended, especially denoise and
Yeah.
Gigapixel to deal with the crop sensor.
Yeah, yeah, or just get a larger sensor camera. Yeah, but and then when you have the larger sensor camera, and you still have these superpowers, right? They don't go
Right,
away.
right,
You just have more
exactly. Yeah.
pixels. You have more pixels to play with. Yeah, the Micro Four Thirds stuff is really interesting. But that video, I'm really curious. I want to try that. I haven't played with the video stuff yet that you have. The but I'm curious to see like what I can do. And I'm a little bit skeptical because I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, you guys are doing some magic stuff on stills. Like in video, like you said, is a whole different beast. There's those interframes and there's the frames and then the compression in there and the motion blur and all that stuff that you have to deal with and still make it look seamless at the end of the day. It can't look like something happened to it. It has to
Yep,
look better than the original, not worse. So I'm really curious how you tackled and solved that problem. But apparently
for
you did,
sure. I
right?
mean, I can definitely send you a copy so you can try it out. But
That's what I was getting
video
at.
that was an angle. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Totally fine. Video is really interesting because right now for image models, this is both for generating something from scratch, and enhancement. You can take any terrible low resolution, super noisy, super blurry image at 640 by 480 resolution and blow it up to be 10, 20 megapixels, and it will look great, and we can make it look like your original as well, and it will just be an amazing recovery, which is pretty magical.
Yeah.
Currently for video, you cannot do that. There's no way to do that and make it look natural. That's why a lot of the text to video generators right now, even the best ones, they can only generate videos up to 10 seconds or 30 seconds. And then they'll have a lot of issues in them. Different people will merge into other people. It won't remember certain parts of the video and they'll flicker in and out. There'll be these little marching ants across it. So
Mhm.
I guess the state of video enhancement and generation right now is nowhere near believable yet. So right now, probably the best that we can do is enhancing, say, 720p to 4K. Looks really, really good, but we can't enhance anything that's too low quality because it just won't look natural yet. This will
Yeah.
change in the next few years, but video is still in the early stages, I would say.
Yeah. I'm gonna pause this. Hang on one second. This is
Sure.
an edit point. Give me one. Okay, so on back to the automation, and the API side of the house, and being able to work with different apps and all that. There's what they call it. I mean, you're a developer, so you understand this stuff. So there's no code software platforms out there like Zapier and Make.com and some others that let you take different apps that have exposed APIs and incorporate them into a workflow that you can then do other things with, like take an image, send it to an API, have something happen to that image, have the image come back, then you take that image and put it in a blog post or something. You have all that be automated. Like, is is the or does the API that you've exposed to users, can it be plugged into those kind of no code solutions, or is it strictly for, quote, proper developers that are writing code and plugging into APIs that way?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have any direct integrations with companies like Zapier right now, but the way that it's structured is we want it to basically be a image and video enhancement utility that can solve a specific problem for you if you're having that in your workflow or your pipeline.
Mhm.
So I think we built a pretty unique technology with a lot of uh, refinement and effort, and we kind of just want to make it available to anybody.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. That's cool. So the API piece of it, I think, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, but I think that also is going to blow up as more and more people start understanding that you can. Like, I think a lot of people don't even know, like when you started describing what an API is and how you've implemented yours, like that was even a thing that you could plug in to the service in the cloud and have it give you something back, right? And that's foreign to a lot of people. It was to me, up until like about, a couple months ago. So with all that said, so all the software that you have, you're moving in the video direction. And on that video side of it, you mentioned that in a couple of years you will have basically parity on the parity of what's happening today in a couple of years on the video side. So we're ahead on the still side. So with that, d- are are we looking at like being able to use and merge generative AI into video? Like at a certain point, I know, like, there's services like Runway and Adobe's getting into it now, being able to prompt a video and have it spit out, what the prompt is at the end of the line there. But is there a future where I'll be able to give it a video and say, I want to add these elements into the video, like a tree on the side of the road that's tracked in place and it looks like it was always there, those kinds of things. Is that a future that's coming, or is that still science fiction?
That is 100% a future that is coming.
Wow.
That is
Wow.
absolutely gonna be
Okay.
here in, a pretty short amount of time. I will say that for us, Topaz Labs, that is not really in our mission to edit the video in that way. But for
Mhm.
us, we are going to be using diffusion models or the more generative models that you see in order to enhance the video and add more detail into it to correct issues and enlarge the video. In fact, that's I would say that's probably our next major project is to release the world's first diffusion-based video enhancement tool, which should be here pretty relatively soon.
Oh, define relatively soon, Eric.
Relatively soon, as in within a year, more than a
Okay.
few months.
Okay, got it. So, well,
Yep.
let's the stretch goal will say, or aggressively we'll say before the end of 2025, we'll see that.
We
Is
could
that
say that, yes.
okay, good. There you go. Because that gives you more than a year to get that done.
Yep. Yep.
Cool. All right. So okay, so we talked about all these magical tools that you've built, and we how they came about and some future facing things of what might happen. Somebody wants to, or looking at this, it probably popped over to the website, which is linked in the blog post and the show notes. But talk about pricing and how all these things are priced. If I want to get in and start playing, are there free trials? Like how does it work?
Yeah, the first thing is, if you just want to try it out, you can go to the website, download the free trial, and just put in some images, put in some videos, and see how you like it. I would just recommend doing that if you want to see the technology, even. But right now, the our most popular tools are our desktop apps, which are $100 for Gigapixel. You own it forever. If you want upgrades past the year, it's $64 for another year of upgrades. And then we have Photo AI at $200, Video AI at $300. These are the prosumer targeted desktop apps. So we're releasing a web app and a mobile app pretty soon that will have pretty significantly lower usage based pricing. So I would look out for that in the next couple of months as well, in order for a to have a lower price entry point.
Very cool. You buried the lead there. Web apps are coming. So web interface, kind
Yes.
of like what Midjourney's doing and all that. So Is it
basically.
competitive with what Midjourney is doing on their site with the editor and all that?
Well, for ours, it's going to be purely enhancement focused. So the idea
Mhm.
is you upload an image and we'll give you back the enhanced version. We're really trying to stay away right now from you can edit your hat to become a top hat kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
more of
yeah,
just make it larger, make it higher resolution, make it cleaner and sharper,
yeah.
um, without any hassle.
Make reality better than it was before. And the prices
Exactly.
that you mentioned, the 99 bucks, so that's one time or is that subscription?
That's one time. So you'll own the software forever because it's a desktop product and all the
Yeah.
processing happens locally. Um, and you also get a year of free upgrades. After that year, if you want upgrades past that, then there's another fee for that.
Okay. Very good. Very good. All right. Well, let's wrap it up with future facing. I always have that at the end. And I obviously I know you can't talk about anything that's not yet released or secret or whatever, but and you've already kind of revealed, right? The moving in the direction of video and all that. So aside from all that, are any other like little nuggets or things that we should be excited about coming?
Yeah, for sure. I think the most exciting thing is this is both the blessing and the curse of so much activity in AI right now. I think there's just going to be a lot of tools to choose from both
Mhm.
us and from other people, which is great for people using the tools. But for us in particular, I think the level of image and video enhancement that you'll be able to get in the next year or so is going to be dramatically better than what you can get right now. So if you feel like the quality of some of your images or videos could be better, even if our tools can't handle it right now, they will be able to handle it in a year from now. So I think that's pretty exciting for me, and hopefully it is if you have that problem as well.
I love it. All right. Well, any final and parting thoughts you want to throw out there before we shut it down?
No, this was great. I mean, personally, just as a person, I'm very excited about AI, LLMs, and image and video generation because I think it'll contribute to a pretty interesting society in general.
Yeah,
So,
for
always
sure.
happy to talk about this stuff and really appreciate the opportunity as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And then please do come back on again once video, to talk about we can dive into video, maybe do a demo or something, and kind of get deep into it. Um yeah, man, thank you. And congratulations on Topaz. You've been going for how long? A decade plus, right?
Yeah, it's been about 20 years now. Our official
20.
incorporation date, yeah, officially incorporated in 2004, although we didn't sell anything until maybe 2007.
Wow. That's good, man.
So,
Congratulations. Keep it going. No signs of stopping, I'm guessing. You guys are just gonna
no
keep
signs of
keep
stopping.
plugging. Very good.
That's
Good,
the
good,
plan.
good. Good on you. Thank you. What about, well, stopping or being acquired, maybe someone? We're not gonna none of that?
That's no fun. We're gonna keep building the products and take it all the
Yes.
way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Eric Yang, CEO of Topaz Labs. Thank you for coming on, man, and let me bend your ear about artificial intelligence in the future. It's been amazing.
Sounds good. It's been a pleasure. Thanks again.